Good afternoon. Steve Brooks here with my co-host, Beach Brooks III. Welcome to Wednesday's Inside Look by Brooks. Tonight we're all looking forward to the fifth game of the Stanley Cup Finals. Going to be played in Tampa, Florida tonight, and we were just talking about maybe going. So hope anybody out there is listening or watching. If you've got a ticket for face value, then please email me, steve@brookslawgroup.com, and I'll be glad to get your ticket from you. I want to talk about insurance today. And, there's this myth. We have clients come in that they will come in, we'll say, tell us about your policy. Well, we have full coverage. Well, there is no such thing as full coverage. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah. Clients all the time say they have full coverage. And my question back to them is, what is full coverage? And unfortunately in Florida, full coverage sometimes, because it's the only thing required under Florida law, is $10,000 worth of personal injury protection and $10,000 worth of property damage. And we'll get into the specific areas of, what are the different types of insurance law, but the $10,000 worth of personal injury protection goes to, most of the time, directly to your doctor. There are times when you can put money in your pocket for mileage or lost wages, but that's to go use to pay your medical expenses. And then the $10,000 worth of property damage is used to fix your car. There's nothing to compensate you for your pain and suffering and ongoing issues you may have in future medical treatment. So Steve and I want to sort of discuss today, what type of coverages you should talk to your insurance company about, and maybe what you would want to add to your policy to make sure that you're protected if you're ever involved in a crash.
Yeah, and I know you agree with me, but the coverage that I wish every client had is uninsured motorist coverage. Because if you have uninsured motorist coverage and you're in a wreck, that there's a pool of money, a bucket of money that is there to compensate you for your injuries. You agree?
I totally agree. Unfortunately, we thought this was going to change this last legislative session, but I believe we're one of only 2 or 3 states that does not require bodily injury coverage to drive in Florida. So many times, Steve and I see it where people are severely injured in a crash and there's just not coverage to go after. Where if you have that uninsured motorist coverage on your own policy, you're protected. Sometimes it's frustrating having to use your own insurance after a crash, but at least you're protecting yourself. You can't always rely on the person that is negligent and caused the crash to make sure that they have the proper coverage to compensate you.
Yeah, and so a lot of people, they sometimes get confused when we talk about uninsured motorist coverage, but look at it like this. If someone runs a red light and hits your car, and that person has no insurance to compensate you for their negligence, but you have uninsured motorist coverage, what that does is, imagine your insurance kind of leaping into their car. So now, by you purchasing uninsured motorist, you have now insured the uninsured driver. So now you can go after your own policy to compensate you for the negligence of the driver who ran the red light. So it's protecting you to make sure that basically every driver in the state of Florida is insured as it relates to you via your uninsured motorist policy, if that makes sense.
It is, and a lot of clients are hesitant to go after their go after their own insurance. However, I tell all my clients that insurance company gladly took your premiums, whether it be every month, every 6 months, every year, whenever you pay your premiums, to have this coverage. And you paid extra for that coverage. So it is their turn to step up and compensate you for the injuries you sustained. And sort of just to back up a little bit here, give you an idea of, most people say, why Florida's a no-fault state, and people get really confused about that. What that means is, regardless of who's at fault in a crash, your auto insurance covers 80% of your first $10,000 in medical expenses through personal injury protection. That's whether you rear end someone or someone rear ends you. Even if you've done nothing wrong, your auto insurance pays for your, like I said, 80% of your first $10,000 in medical expenses. Then you look at the other person's coverage. And if they have what's called bodily injury coverage on their policy, that is what we go after. And if that is enough coverage to compensate you for your injuries and your pain and suffering and all your damages, that's the end of the case. If they do not have bodily injury coverage, because like I explained earlier, it's not required under Florida, or they do not have enough bodily injury coverage, then it goes to that uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage, which we call UM. So there's multiple buckets you can go after. You just always want to make sure that you're protected. Because like I said, you can't control who hits you, but you can control what type of coverage you have on your own policy.
Absolutely. And you brought up something earlier in the podcast, and that's Florida law. I mean, Florida, both Republican and the Democrat bipartisan support in the Senate and the legislature of Florida passed a bill making us one of the remaining 2 states who, I mean, the other 48 states have mandatory BI, correct?
Mandatory bodily injury coverage.
Right. We're only one of 2 states, Florida, that does not have mandatory BI. Now, what that means is, again, let's go back to the red light runner. In 48 states, if someone runs a red light and hits you, the person running the red light has bodily injury coverage to protect you for your injuries. Florida does not have that. Our state Senate and our state legislature passed a bill, bipartisan support, to enact mandatory BI, so that if a driver runs a red light and hits you, they're going to actually have coverage that you can go against to compensate you for your injuries. I mean, you would not believe, and I know you know this, Beach, the number of clients that we see that come in with major injuries, and unfortunately the other driver has no bodily injury coverage, so there's no money to go after. This law, had Governor DeSantis signed it, would have protected those drivers, those injured people, because every driver in the state of Florida would have been mandated to have bodily injury coverage. He vetoed it. And the only thing I can think of is the insurance companies got to him. And you know how that works. It was very political.
One of the biggest issues there is, one gripe we always hear from everyone, and it's my gripe too, is, how expensive auto insurance is. And one reason that, in my opinion, that auto insurance is so expensive in the state of Florida is insurance companies can't properly assess risk. You may be a safe driver, but if someone, like Steve said, runs a red light, hits you or ends you, we already discussed that personal injury protection. Your insurance is having to pay money out of their pocket when you did nothing wrong. So you are paying for all the bad drivers out there. Where if we went to a fault-based system, they could say, hey, Steve, Beach, John Smith, you are safe drivers, and we're actually going to charge you less because we know if, God forbid, you were ever in a crash, it most likely is not going to be your fault. So therefore, he could pay less. We could all pay less in insurance, and you could raise the premiums on the people that are deemed to be more risky drivers. But unfortunately, like Steve said, this law was vetoed. So we are still one of the 2 remaining states without mandatory bodily injury. And hopefully that changes, in the next legislative session. But unfortunately, that is something that we see all the time. And another question that's sort of getting off topic here is, so many people say, well, can't we go and get money from this guy even though they don't have any insurance? And unfortunately, we can go get a verdict that says $10 million on it, but the odds of us ever collecting any money, once again, the way the laws are written in Florida, are very difficult. So at the end of the day, I think the one message we want to get across to everyone today is make sure you protect yourself. None of us ever want to use auto insurance, but if, God forbid, you're ever involved in a crash, please make sure that you have that uninsured motorist coverage. So at least at the end of the day, that you will be protected, that you will be compensated for your injuries, and that you will be taken care of.
And that is great advice. And the other thing I would implore you to do is to contact your local state representative or state senator and voice your that you are in favor of the bill that they passed, and ask them how you might help to get that passed, because that benefits everybody. Any closing remarks?
Nope. At the end of the day, I think if anybody has any questions about insurance, what type of coverage they should have, don't hesitate to reach out to either Steve or I, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Beach, and thank you for joining me today. And we will see you next Wednesday for Wednesday's Inside Look by Brooks. As always, reach out to Steve at brookslawgroup.com or Beach III at brookslawgroup.com, and we will be glad to get back to you. Thanks for joining.